Okay, I apologize for the technical difficulties. Hopefully, all y'all can hear me out there. Welcome to this episode of Dudes Talking, episode 15. Our guest is going to be the Andrew Bello from Cancel This Political Podcast. And we're going to discuss modern day conservatism, as well as we're going to discuss if Trump is our guy, which most of y'all know where I stand on that. But let's have a conversation with Andrew Bello. Maybe he can change my mind on that. You know, why don't we go ahead and see? Give him a call. Hey, Andrew, you there?
Yes, I am. What's going on, man?
Why don't you say hello to the fine people out there?
Hello, fine people of We Read the Documents on YouTube. I'm the Andrew Bello. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. I've been a fan of your work for a long time. When I first heard you on the Wednesday Locker Room, and then I actually started listening to your podcast, and yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. We're definitely gonna have a discussion about conservatism. We're gonna have a discussion about Trump. And though I may not agree with you on everything, and we're going to get into it, it doesn't mean that I don't enjoy your show, and it doesn't mean that I don't think that you have any talent or you're not knowledgeable or any of that. I mean, and I definitely know that your heart's in it. Your heart's in the right place. It ain't like Jordan Sather and the rest of those Q-tips. All right, you just want America to be at its best.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good assessment of my overall belief structure. I mean, yeah, conservatism. We're going to obviously talk about as we're breaking it down, but yeah, I think it's sort of a blanket statement that would overall cover me. I always like to half-heartedly joke that I'm about 3 steps to the left of anarchy, but maybe we'll unfurl a little bit more of that throughout the course of this concept. But yeah, individual freedom. I mean, that's the big thing for me, and that only lies on one side of the political spectrum right now.
Yeah, I agree with that to some degree. I myself was raised a conservative, a neoconservative actually. My dad was a liberal and a conspiracy theorist, funny enough, and when I was a child, I thought he was crazy. I used to watch X-Files with him. I used to listen to Coast AM with him. He's been passed since I was 18. I wish he was alive today for me to tell him that he was right.
Yeah.
But, he voted for Bill Clinton. My grandfather was a conservative, however. I used to grow up watching the McLaughlin Group with him. I used to grow up listening to Rush Limbaugh and watching Sean Hannity and watching Fox News from him. And it used to be such a big joke to my friends growing up, Andrew, that I would sign my name John W. Brisson because I loved George W. Bush so much. Okay? And my friend actually, for my graduation gifts, but I'm going to his wedding this Sunday, he gave me a Ronald Wilson Reagan calendar.
Very nice.
So, yeah, I was heavily conservative, Christian conservative growing up. And then I woke up to Alex Jones, woke me up about 2008
Okay.
to the World Order. And I became libertarian. I believed in the Tea Party movement. I believed in Ron Paul. And then around 2012 to 2014, I kind of realized that it's all a sham. Doesn't matter who's in office, it's all a sham. And it was until Trump that I actually thought that maybe there was someone out there that would be us against the world. Maybe America could actually be something. Maybe it can be the shining city on the hill. And maybe, it may be proud to be an American again. Trump did during his campaign.
Okay.
What about you? Why don't we start?
No, I feel a lot of the same vibes. I mean, I was kind of telling you right before we got on here, I was always politically aware, not necessarily super passionate about any of this sort of stuff until Trump rolled around. I mean, there was an era around 9/11 and kind of the aftermath of that where I was in high school. I was basically just figuring out the basics of life, never mind, trying to understand the in-depths of politics and then even conspiracies beyond that. The 9/11 truth movement is something that really opened my eyes. Alex Jones, another person as well. But, when Trump came along, I mean, and I voted for him initially for the same reason I'm sure you voted for him, and that's because his name wasn't Hillary Clinton. And I think both those of us who were paying attention, 8 years ago or 8 years prior to 2016 knew Hillary Clinton was going to be the nominee in 2016 because she should have been the nominee in 2008, but Barack Obama slipped in there, or at least she was supposed to be, I guess, in some sort of roundabout way, because she is entitled to these sorts of things, I guess, in her opinion. But yeah, so when I knew that Hillary Clinton was going to be the Democratic nominee, I scrambled and looked far and wide for anything on the right that I could lean on that could potentially beat her. And I'm looking at that field of Republicans and Kasich and Cruz and Huckabee and a lot of guys who I agree with on a lot of policies, but are just unwinnable. Like they could not have possibly won any sort of national election, never mind one up against the political machine known as the Clintons. So when Trump came around, I said, you know what? This might just be crazy enough to work. And in the short term, it did. It ended up winning. And, he ended up winning. He likes to win. Obviously, that's a big theme with him in general. He's sort of like a hip hop star where he just likes to talk about how great he is and he hypes you up and he gets you involved in it. Like you feel good, too, about it. We beat Hillary Clinton. We did it. I mean, it's just, whether or not that's a good thing ultimately is yet to be determined. But I'm pretty sure it's for the better, at least. But I'm sure we'll get into some of that.
So candidate Trump is a little bit different than President Trump.
Yes.
Okay. So when I listened to candidate Trump, he talked about some of the, he talked about, making America great again, which I agreed with, and anti-legal immigration, which also as a conservative I am against. And, he talked about pro-life, which I'm for. And, Trump made it the facade that he was a Christian, which I am. So you add in all that, and, then so when he talks about 9/11, though, he gave us a standard narrative of the Saudi Arabian hijackers. He did talk about how Saudi Arabia wasn't good during the campaign. And then also, but he didn't mention, Israelis' involvement with the Mossad, or he didn't mention, the American Round Table, but he did out the Bushes. He did talk about Bushes, and
there was an element of that.
He destroyed Jeb Bush during the debates, and I appreciated that because I hated the Bushes. So, candidate Trump was someone who I thought maybe was, him against the deep state, that maybe he was the man. So that's why I believed in him. He was saying all the right things to me. He even talked about sometimes how America, even though he was for, America to be great, he also talked about how America wasn't always right, how we had made some mistakes, how we had did some things wrong. And, he was on Alex Jones, and everything. So I was like, well, maybe Trump's our guy. So that's why I voted him. And I hated Hillary Clinton. I still despise the Clintons to this day. I always will. And so I was like, well, maybe I should vote for Trump. I mean, Jeff Rentz is telling me to vote for Trump. Alex Jones is telling me to vote for Trump. He's saying all the right things. And there was a few things here and there during the campaign that made me cause or question. He was kind of wavering a little bit on H-1B visas, if I remember correctly. It's been so long ago. It's been like 3 years at this point.
Yeah, it feels like an eternity.
But I think at one time he was wavering on H-1B visas during a debate, and then he went back and clarified his positions. Of course, Trump hasn't done a damn thing with H-1B visas, since then. But yeah, so there's a few times during the campaign where I was kind of like, well, maybe, but I stuck with it. What about you? Looking back on Trump's campaign, it was a roller coaster ride. He was taking down, Hillary Clinton. He was taking down the Bushes. Coming up saying that, Cruz's father may have been a part of the JFK assassination.
That was a good one.
It looked good at the time, Yeah.
Oh, he looked great at the time. I still think he's doing okay considering what he's dealing with. But again, I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit later on in the conversation. But what he does better than virtually anybody I've ever really seen in the public squares, his ability to just kind of brand somebody something and then bludgeon them with it until they just disappear. Low energy Jeb, lightweight Kristen Gillibrand, the Lion Ted, crooked Hillary. It's so simple, but it's so effective. And really, my support for Trump is really kind of based not specifically around that, but because of what he does with it. And we'll get into policy stuff, I'm sure, but really my support still lies with him because he wins the culture war. And he gets out there, and despite the fact...
I disagree with you, Aaron. We'll talk about... We'll talk about that, but go ahead.
No, and I think he just goes out there and he there's a certain number of F's that he gives about things, and it's precisely zero when he goes out there and he says whatever he's going to say to the press or in the speech or on a campaign rally or whatever.
He cucks a lot, man. Even when I believed in him, and we'll get to that, there were certain times like when he went out there and didn't want to spend the increase, appeared that he didn't want to sign the increase in spending, and he was like, I don't like it, but I'm still going to. There's many things that Trump, if you're looking at it purely on a non-conspiratorial and you're like, I'm a conservative, I'm a Trump supporter, there are many things he's cucked on.
Yeah, I think, but again, those are more policy things. We'll talk about spending. That's something but if I had one thing that I would be like, dude, you got to rein this in, it would be the spending. That would be with any Republican ever since the beginning of time. I don't know that he's necessarily been all that much worse than others in the past, but
That's true.
as far as the culture goes, he just goes out there, he says what he's got to say. He goes out there and often states a basic truth in a very crude fashion, in such a crude fashion that the media immediately jumps to it. The public narrative jumps to, what is he saying? I can't believe our president says stuff like this. And then if you wait 24 to 48 hours, it turns out he was right. Rats in Baltimore, people dancing on roofs in New Jersey on 9/11,
Well, yeah,
like all of these things.
but about the dancing in roofs in New Jersey on 9/11. What about the dancing Israelis? In
Okay.
9/11 as well. He didn't mention that. He didn't mention the supposed Mossad plot to supposedly bomb the George Washington Bridge. None of that. He didn't. So I mean, it's a thing. My biggest thing with Trump is he's a better Ronald Reagan.
Yeah. Okay. What's wrong with that?
Well, Ronald Reagan was a horrible human being. I mean, a Ray
Wow.
Contra affair, Franklin scandal, that's the problem, okay? So that's the thing is Trump is a better Ronald Reagan. He can sell to his base better than Ronald could. And see, that's the thing is it's not what Trump doesn't, it's not what Trump tells you most of the time. It's what he doesn't tell you. And that's what changed. The thing that started thinking things weren't right was the transition team. And when he started making appointments, okay, that's where I started questioning some things. I started saying, "Wait a minute, this isn't. Wait. He promised to drain the swamp. Why would you fill the swamp to drain the swamp? That doesn't make any sense." So he started putting in, Wilbur Ross, Stephen Mnuchin, later on John Bolton, Mike Pompeo.
Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of the Bolton move.
So any of those, and we can argue. You can argue about McMaster. McMaster may have not have really been, may have been an enemy towards Israel, and you can debate that. But I of course I think once you get to that level, they're all corrupted. If you would have asked 2014 John that, I would have said Trump's not our guy. They're all corrupted. Every single one of them are corrupted. But 2016, John was on hopium. He was getting a fresh dose of hopium into his veins. Make America great again. So around that time, I started saying, wait a minute. Something ain't right about this. Why is he? Why are these people going up like The Apprentice? And he's picking. Okay, so first of all, for vice president, at the time, I thought he was going to pick Michael Flynn.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to pick Chris Christie. Which is who I think Trump would have actually wanted because
if it weren't
are friends.
Yeah, if it weren't for Bridgegate, Christie would have been VP or AG in all likelihood.
But instead of this, to get the evangelical, to get the Christians on board, to get the families, the CMPs, and we'll talk about Council for National Policy later, he had to choose Mike Pence. And Mike Pence is horrible. A horrible choice for a vice president, in my opinion. It's not as bad as picking George H.W. Bush, one of the most corrupted human beings on the planet, for a vice president that's going to put a bullet in you, Ronnie. It ain't that. But it's pretty close. All right?
Now, see, I disagree on Pence. Now, I mean, I don't love Pence as a person. I don't even necessarily love him as a...
He's a strong
listen. He's the vice president. He does nothing unless Trump dies. He does virtually nothing.
Exactly.
So,
do you want that position?
And that, to me, is precisely why Mike Pence was the pick. Think about every time you see something trending on Twitter, impeach now, yada, yada. The first comment you see underneath it every time is, you sure you're ready for President Pence? And then it just pitters off into the night because all the people who do these things, who go on to Twitter and they scream, and look, these people wouldn't even understand the conversation you and I are going to have because they're just so completely out of touch with what's really going on in the world.
The right is just as bad in some regard.
There's bad people on both sides, but the left.
We're talking about the QAnon movement. They are just as blind as the resist movement is on the left. Okay, let's be real here.
I don't know that that's necessarily true, but all right, we can argue that point one way or another.
They're that, they are that. We'll talk about the right-left paradigm and where I think Trump is actually losing the culture war from a parapolitical point of view. But go ahead.
Okay. I forgot where I was. Where were we?
as far as
Oh, okay, yeah. So all the impeachment. Oh, Mike Pence
yes,
being a good vice
yes.
presidential pitch. Yeah, I mean, actually, for one of the reasons that you stated is that he managed to kind of loop in the Christian right, the people that had some doubts about Trump's moral character. Now they look at a Pence. Pence goes, "Yeah, this guy's okay with me." Suddenly, that crowd starts to come in, and look, I mean, it's politics. Is there sketchy stuff that goes on? Is there manipulation that goes on? Absolutely, it's the name of the game. Virtually, I mean, we needed to win this election. He could have nominated the ghost of Michael Jackson to be his vice president. If it beat Hillary Clinton, it wasn't going to bother me.
Okay, so after that, I started, getting some reservations, and then when the wall wasn't being built, and we were circling on illegal immigration and stuff like that, is when I really started to question. Okay,
Okay.
and now looking at it, I think a wall. I think if you're going to stop illegal immigration, it's probably a lot better just to cut all entitlements. Okay, make it no incentive for illegal immigrants to live in this country. Okay, but
I don't disagree on that one, actually. I
so
mean, as much as I do like the wall, the incentive is something that we need to start worrying
I
about
think
and
it's more
addressing.
powerful in my opinion. But so none of that happened. So I really and so a friend of mine who I've done we've read the documents actual podcast with Titus. He kept showing me the work of Josh Reeves. And the first time I remember watching it during the campaign and learning about the Council for National Policy, which is the right-wing version of the Council on Foreign Relations. And I was like, there's no way. There's no, Trump's our guy. No way. No way. And then I watched it again. And I got a little bit wiser. I started putting some things together. Started putting some things up here in this map. And then I realized, I said, wait a minute. There's an organization that Trump went to speak to before he was elected president in 2016. George W. Bush spoke in 1999. George H.W. Bush spoke to in 1988. That Ronald Wilson Reagan had spoken to many times during his presidency and around the time of the founding of the Council for National Policy in 1981. So we used to remember a long time ago, back in 2012, I know it's a long time ago, where Obama and Hillary, it might actually have been 2008, when Obama and Hillary were, it might have been 2008. When Obama and Hillary were going for the presidential nomination to see who would run, was it 08 or 2000?
Yeah, it had to be 08, yeah.
And they both had met at like a Bilderberg meeting. And then Obama was the one who went. All right, you kind of remember that?
I do remember that. There was kind of the rumor that he was the pick for now,
yes,
sort of deal. Yep.
And everybody
Okay.
harped on that, okay? Mm-hmm. So what if there's a secret organization that's more secretive than the CFR, okay? And they've been involved in Iran-Contra affair, they've been involved in the Franklin scandal, they've been involved in 9/11, and so they go to Trump. Now, their first pick was Pence. First pick was Cruz. Their first pick was Cruz to run, okay? That's who they backed initially. But they figured out that Cruz did not have the charisma that Trump had, so therefore they dumped Cruz and then they went for Trump. So now, knowing the parapolitics between Trump's election, you can actually argue just like, and as much as I detest both John Kerry and George H.W. Bush, J. Kenneth Blackwell, CMP member, through the Diebold machines, stole the election for George H.W. Bush over John Kerry over Ohio, okay? You
Right.
can argue the same thing happened because Trump was destined to elect by the world order to be put in power in 2016 to destroy all your hopes that we won the election. Okay?
Right. Is this the ES and S voting machines thing? Is this
yeah, it was
okay?
okay. So let's keep on. And it's the same thing happened down there in Florida in 2018. All right, so let's keep going. So
Okay,
if that's the case, and they put him in, all right, they put him in. Let's just stay from that. Shouldn't that make you step back and think about it? Well, and I know you're a conspiracy theorist too. Like, I understand the conservatism and the conspiracy, but why is it unlike me where they met and I said, "Oh shit, you keep going"? That's my question to you: is why me? I said, "Oh my god, I was fooled," and then but you still have the hope. Why?
Yeah, it's funny because there was a period of time there was a bit of a kind of a dichotomy going on in my head because it's conversations. I mean, I don't know how open you are about your conspiracy talk when you're with people who aren't necessarily in the know.
Oh, I'm
I
open.
tend
I'm open. I'm open. I
You're
don't care.
fairly open about it. Yeah. See,
Yeah.
I'm generally trying to not talk about my disbelief in like the Sandy Hook shootings and things along those lines. Like that's not a conversation I'm trying to have with my grocer or my dad, for instance. So there was an element of me kind of keeping it separate for a while. Honestly, I'm starting to sort of merge back together here a
Yeah.
little bit. But I will go as far as to say that if he was chosen, by the Council for National Policy, and that is somehow either deep state or perhaps one half of the deep state, which is something that I'm starting to consider more and more, that we've basically been witnessing a deep state civil war play out in front of
If
us
that
for
is
the
true,
last
it's still
couple
not
of
the
years.
deep state we want, though. That's the thing.
Well, that's true. Yeah, then it comes down to, I mean, do you support neither? Do you pick one? I picked the side, because the side that I'm picking as far as Trump goes is the side that I'm watching the news. I'm reading Twitter. I'm watching movies. One side is, pro gun, pro life,
But
pro
what if they're
free
not? What
speech.
if that's a
What if
facade,
they're
though?
not? What do you mean, what if they're not?
But
They
they're
couldn't
not.
be more
No,
openly
but
out there
no,
doing it.
But they're not. They're not. When you look at the CMP and what they stand for and what they do, and when you look at the family, if you're looking at it from a Christian standpoint and what they preach and what they do, they appear they're pro-life, but majority of these people who make up this Council for National Policy is kind of like a dichotomy. You have Zionists and you have anti-Zionists. You have white nationalists and you have civic nationalists, okay? So from their standpoint, they actually, a lot members of the CFP have connections to eugenics and phrenology. So
I mean, if that's going on, that's going on, but that's not touching you and I more times
but
than
it's
not.
what,
I mean, it's
but it doesn't.
you're
But
talking
I'm
about
saying,
just such a high level of stuff that's going on there, and it's trickling down to us ultimately. But I'm way more ready to fight the fight that's in front of me right now than.
So you won't pick. But don't you think that this fight has been steered?
I think it's been steered. I think it's
by the
been
world order?
manipulated. I think it's been by both sides of it. Yeah, and in
Yes.
some way, shape, or form. I mean, one way or another, when you look at most just basic political issues, for the large part, there's a binary choice there. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of gray in between there, but it's not like, there's not a lot of people who are on abortion. You pretty much have a side. You're either pro-choice or you're pro-life. You're,
Correct.
you want guns, you don't want guns. You want free speech, you don't want free speech.
There are some people who will get into the weeds and guns, though. I will say that there are some people.
There are some details to get in there, but usually it kind of stems from an ideology of you're either leaning one way or the other, and then you're willing to kind of come back towards the other side a little
Yes.
bit. Guns are something that, like, as soon as you get somebody like abortion, it's something that evokes a reaction in a lot of people, particularly
it does,
with
but
the news
not
cycle.
as much as abortion, though.
No, not as much as abortion, but it's getting there. The way that the news is pushing the mass shooting
But
stuff.
again, Trump's pushing red flag laws, and I'm
He's-
against.
yeah.
And you can
See,
say that's rhetoric, but as much as you want to say that's rhetoric, the Daily Caller came out now. As much as I can't stand Tucker Carlson, he's Comet Pizza Ping Pong's VFB, according to 2 restaurant reviews, favorite guest. Okay, and this is before Pizzagate. All right, so nonetheless, his connections to the CMP and so forth and so forth. He's even put now. So if Trump actually comes out with this, the United States government through the Trump administration, we're actually talking with the big tech companies. Funny how that works. And of course, big tech's ties to both China and Israel, and making it so that they want your Amazon. They want your Alexa. They want
Right, they want your Ring doorbell. I saw that the
they
other
want
day. Yeah.
those to listen in and see if you got a little bit of mental stability. Maybe you smoked a joint. And if so, maybe you shouldn't have your guns. Now, if Trump does something like that, how are you going to feel about that? Now, I know that is what ism, but still, if that does
No, and
happen,
it's fair, and it might happen. I mean, look at bump stocks. We saw that happen, and it wasn't something I was pleased with at the time. Look, I would say there's like probably 30 to 40% of the time, like I'm not happy with what's going on, but I unfortunately have to consider what the alternative would have been, and still I think that we're better off for it ultimately at the end of the day. But on that particular issue with the red flag laws, like, yeah, I'm going to be pretty furious if he goes through there. The NRA in particular, and gun owners and conservatives more broadly, have pushed this to the point to where it is, and have gotten him to where he is. And this has been a movement on a cultural level. Again, well, I'm sure we're going to talk again to the weeds on that a little bit too. But for him to I mean, he's a lot of balls, he's a lot of bluster, but not always does he follow through on those things, and it does aggravate me a lot. I wish he had, whacked China with harder tariffs last week instead of deciding to back down off of them.
I'm fine with tariffs as long as if it go back to how it was when we used to fund our country to begin with, meaning that we had tariffs and didn't have the income tax. You can't have both. You can only have one or the other. I prefer tariffs over the income tax, but that's just me.
I could get behind that. Be honest with you. I mean, the elimination of the income tax is something that, I mean, it's just outright theft. I think we might agree on that one. But
yeah,
with getting back to Trump on the red flag laws, I mean, yeah, that's going to be a huge blow. I think he's also kind of set himself up for a safeguard to where he suggests or even signs a bill suggesting that this goes through, and then his Supreme Court might somehow back him up, and kind of be the backstop there and say, no, you guys can't do this. There's this thing called the Second Amendment.
Who was involved in the Vince Foster murder cover-up, he always, not always, but a lot of times he rules liberal.
He does. He goes the other way very often, and again, that's a supreme hypothetical in that case. I mean, I'm going to be upset if he signs a bill for red flag laws, like one way or the other. Having said that, I mean, what's the alternative? If the president was Hillary Clinton, all guns would be getting confiscated.
But my question about Hillary Clinton, and we don't know that, is...
We don't know that, but we can assume that the reaction would be severely worse than it is on Trump's behalf. Trump's doing everything he can to, like, all right, maybe red flag laws, maybe we'll get rid of bump stocks. He's not talking about confiscations, eliminating manufacturing of guns. He's not trying to take anything away from people.
But the two things of that, though, Andrew, is one, I almost think the way the world order plays with guns, whether or not they're going to take them or not, I almost wonder if they're in cahoots with that, and that's just to drive ammunition cells and just to drive gun cells up, okay? Even with a bomb. And two,
I think there's an element of that.
And two, I actually kind of wish Hillary Clinton would have won at this point. And hear me out.
No, I think I know where you're going.
We wouldn't have 3/4 of the conservative movement asleep, thinking Trump's their guy. We wouldn't have Q-tips. We wouldn't have Q-tards. We wouldn't have, people listening to Alex Jones. I mean, they would be as much, but they wouldn't be... That's my thing is okay, so now the CNP gets a blanket run to do whatever they may choose. Now, we'll see what that may be. I think it's going to be eventual war in Syria, eventual war in Iran. I think it's going to be... We're already destabilizing Venezuela. Now, you and I can argue about Venezuela if you want to, okay? We can argue about bringing freedom in America down there. If you want to, we can go there. But I don't think that we should be involved because the CNP has overthrown Nicaragua and Daniel Ortega since the 1980s with the Iran-Contra affair. All right? So that's when John Bolton goes up there, CNP member, and says the triumph of tyranny, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela, is because the CNP has always had a fetish for Latin America. All right? And if you want to say it's the two, globalists versus CNP versus the CFR, if they're not all at the top, which I think they are, if you want to look at it just based off that, the CFR has control of a lot of countries within Latin America. But however, they lost Brazil to Bolsonaro, CNP. Loves Bolsonaro.
That's true.
Israel loves Bolsonaro. So that's the thing is I actually honestly believe if Hillary Clinton would have won at this point, yeah, they may have been able to accelerate, but maybe they didn't. Maybe it would have swung the pendulum so far back up to the right, then maybe we would have gotten some sort of genuine movement. Because remember, the Tea Party was co-opted by the CNP. Trump's been co-opted. Trump was started with the CNP, and so was the Tea Party, if you really want to get down to it. But any genuine people around both MAGA and the Tea Party, Billy Ray had Ron Paul on his show. What did he say about the CNP? And I played on my channel Rand Paul actually talking at a CNP meeting. So that's the thing about all this, and one I want to get your opinion on it is, if you know all that, and I want you to research it. And I understand you're saying from a culture war standpoint, as a conservative, I want Trump in there. But remember, Trump is not truly a conservative.
No,
and I can
no,
actually
definitely
argue
not.
either Ronald Wilson Reagan wasn't either. The CNP is false conservatism. It's kind of like wolves in sheep's clothing, where they appear like they're conservative. They appear that they're pro-Christianity and pro-gun and pro-life and pro-free speech and anti-pornography and all this other stuff, but in reality they're not. So what happens when Americans find out that, just like with Reagan, things aren't happening like they think they should happen. What happens to that pendulum? Doesn't it violently swing even harder to the left than it was previously beforehand? If you don't
I'm
think you'll get a socialist president in 2024 the way things are going, you will.
I'm very much concerned about that effect. Yeah, there was an element of at the time, kind of looking at it less in the nitty gritty, more on kind of just the broad scope. When he got nominated, when he won the election, I'm like, all right, this is great. And one of the root things that got me behind him from the very beginning is because he's such a showman, he's a reality
Yeah.
star, he's an unconventional candidate. People are going to pay attention for like the first time. People are going to actually be like, people who wouldn't otherwise care at all about politics are now going to be focusing on this. Now, I didn't quite think that through
Yeah.
to, add social media, add YouTube, add Hollywood, add the 90% liberal media out there on top of it, and just the lack of a better term, shitstorm that we've been living in for the last 3 years, since, or 2.5 years or whatever it is. And it was one of those things where it's just like, ah, shucks, we are definitely going to get that pendulum swinging way back the other way. I mean, like, as sad and as disgusting of an idea as this is, President Ocasio-Cortez is not that far out of the realm of possibilities, considering the vigor that Trump has riled up in the left, and for that matter, the right, kind of, obviously opposite ends of how they're feeling about that. But people are impassioned about this stuff. They're passionately stupid more times than not on both sides of the spectrum. But we have an engagement on this to where I'm hoping we can ultimately get to the level that you and Billy Ray operate on. I always say this to Billy Ray. I was just like, we're defending a house. Like, I'm watching the front door. You guys are worried about like the back window in the shed. Like, and it's good. We should protect all angles. But the fight, I think, is right in front of us here. And I hope that one day we can get to the point where we can start having, national conversations about all these things that you and I are talking about right now. But I don't know that we're there yet. And frankly, the populace as a whole couldn't even wrap their heads around most of this.
But I would switch it around though. That's the thing is I actually think I'm covering the front door and you're covering the window in the shed, because when it comes down to it, when it comes down to us eventually going to be pulled into foreign wars that you could say could escalate into World War III very easily for the Council for National Policy, for Israel, for the Mountain Jews to reclaim Iran, if you want to go even a step further. So for all of that, it's just interesting how that's one of my biggest concerns, because if we go to war in Syria and we go into war in Iran, say what you want to say about those countries, the Iran-Contra affair, you have to remember, the United States gave arms through Israel to Iran to fight Iraq.
Right.
We armed Iran. So, I mean...
We arm an unfortunate amount of people over in that region of the world that we shouldn't be arming.
All over the world. So, I mean, when you're looking at that... I mean, look, if you're looking at it from a culture standpoint, yes, I am conservative. Yes, I'm against a majority of social justice warrior politics, okay? That's what got me to vote. One of the main reasons that got me to vote for Trump in the first place, because I was a cisgender white male. How dare I have any opinions? Okay.
Yep.
And I understand that. Don't get me wrong. I can see the plea from you saying, we got to do something about this. But you have to remember, unlike what Hannity tells you, unlike what Rush Limbaugh tells you, unlike Alex Jones tell you, majority of Americans aren't either conservative or liberal. Majority of Americans are about in the middle. And they like the following things. They like their guns. They like to abort their babies. They're agnostic on religion, maybe slightly Christian. They're okay with free speech as long as someone doesn't harm, their media. That's when they start getting pissy. Okay, once, free speech, if someone gets fired from their job for saying something, they don't really care unless it's them. However, once they start changing the free speech in the media that they enjoy, majority of Americans get upset about that. Okay?
That's true.
The majority of America actually surprisingly is anti-war. You wouldn't think that would be the case, but they are. Most of America's slightly illegal immigration, especially when you push Americans over illegal immigrants, that really starts to pull the dial up.
It just makes sense at a certain point.
Most Americans are for actually free healthcare, though. They are, and by and large, if you look at the statistics, they are for that. So America is in a lot of ways mostly moderate, maybe slightly conservative, maybe on certain issues. But there are certain issues like abortion, for example. I hate to say it, it's a losing. Okay, for liberals, a losing war is guns. Once you start talking about guns, you
Yeah.
ain't gonna win crap. Okay, and for conservatives, once you start talking about outlawing abortion, because Americans love having sex and they love aborting babies. You're going to lose in that regard too as well, unless you're in a conservative area. You will lose. All right. So those are talking points on both sides. So the issue with all this, I guess what I'm getting to is there's only so many people that we're going to bring to our cause of traditionalism and conservatism, and you're not going to convert many people on the left to your cause. This whole what is the movement, the walk away movement or whatever? That's just a controlled psyop. Now a few people change. I've met a few people. I've also met a few people who were right who went left because of Trump, funny enough, how that works.
Oh, of course.
But, my issue is the culture war. I get it that it's important. I really do. But I think, sadly, we're a fallen empire and it's lost.
I think, well, I mean, it was kind of, there was something you said in there that kind of reminded me of just, I mean, well, with the left-right paradigm that we have here in the U.S., it's inescapable. It exists. It's there. I mean, unless we can come up with a third option that is more along those lines.
Say it's exaggerated, though. That's the thing is, again, most Americans, when you sit down at a table, and Trump has made this, Obama made it bad. Trump threw gasoline on it. All right, and the media, the controlled media on both sides. So, and you could say, well, that's a good thing because the pendulum is, it's going to the right. I'd actually argue because of Trump, it's actually shifting so violently to the left in the next 4 to 6 years, depending on how things go. I don't know if it's ever going to switch back anytime soon. Okay, we'll see. So
we'll see.
But the thing is Trump ain't really doing anything to stop it. He's not deporting illegals, which we know is going to be a massive problem after this next election. Okay, if it continues in the rate it's continuing, conservatives ain't going to win. All right, and it is done. Put a fork in it. It is done. All right.
Oh yeah.
So based off of that, now I will say this, and I want to get your opinion on this. The only way Trump can win in 2020 is for the prodigal son Steve Bannon to return and to revigorate MAGA.
Okay? Oh wow!
Now
I didn't see that coming.
Now that's what's happening now. Okay, and were you being facetious, or did you really not see that coming?
No, no, I really didn't see that name popping up right there, but I can see it. I mean, Bannon, for the reprehensible human being he is, relatively so. I mean, he knows his politics, right? Like he came in and he just came and pushed all the right buttons, and just all of a sudden, MAGA was really, hit full steam under his reign there as his short stint as the campaign manager. But he was kind of part of the, sort of the I would say not quite CNP level brain trust, but there's sort of a conservative movement that floats around the even like the Jeff Sessions is the Laura Ingrams, like there's sort of like this weird Ben Shapiro, Stephen Miller, like all those kind of folks. Go ahead.
Stephen Bannon was a member of the CNP.
Well, no, okay, he was an actual member of the CNP.
Yes, he was. 2014 leaked memorandum. Who was the next person that you mentioned?
Who else was in there?
Laura
I mentioned
flirts with the CNP, but she's never spoken to it.
She does. Jeff Sessions.
Jeff Sessions has spoken to many Council for National Policy meetings.
Yep. I mentioned Shapiro, Stephen Miller, who was a clerk for Sessions for a while, right? At some point in his career, I thought so. Yeah.
So all of that, like you're saying, Bannon, Trump's not calling him Sloppy Steve anymore.
Right. Yeah, I think there'll be, it's almost with Trump. I mean, I hate to use the Teflon Don thing, but it's just like nothing sticks to him. Like I would think any other politician, considering the heat that Steve Bannon brought upon him and the campaign and the conservative movement more broadly, just for being who he was and being involved with the campaign, it would be like the dumbest possible decision to bring him back in. But because nothing seems to bother Trump. This is one of the things that always kind of chuckles with. I always chuckle about the racist allegations, and this is a little bit of a tangent. It's like, you really think he could hide it? Like, he doubles down on everything all the time. He just goes out there and if he said something one day, even the disloyalty to the Jew comment, the disloyal Jew voters that he was talking about the other day, he came right back out and said the same exact thing to the media after everybody was dumping on him for doing it. So I find him a very blunt instrument. Don't get me wrong. He is a hammer looking for a nail. And sometimes it's the media, sometimes it's, people that I wish he wouldn't attack. Sometimes it's countries I wish he wouldn't attack. But on occasion, he hits the right nail. And I think that's an important thing that helps the conservative movement more broadly, because it kind of gets everybody else a little bit more fired up. We start talking about the issues, even if his rhetoric alone is just starting to get thoughts out to people and start kind of riling up the conservative base a little bit. I think it's long term. It's a good thing, because obviously we know the media, Hollywood, a vast majority of the idiots on social media all are very loud, very left, and it's going.
No. I got no.
Go ahead.
No, I won't
What are
let
you
you.
knowing? Hollywood is 100% left all the time, all day, every day. No one dares speak a conservative thought in Hollywood, or they are
Scientology's got a
shunned.
big influence in Hollywood. I mean, Israel does. Israel's influence in Hollywood tends to lean left, and China's influence in Hollywood tends to lean communist. But there is a Scientology element. Remember where Steve Mnuchin came from and who he funded. Okay. So yes, there is a little bit of right in Hollywood. I have to, but but I.
Oh yeah, what do they call them? The Friends of Abe or something like that. There was sort of a group that was underground and then above ground, and then tried to go back underground, but it didn't really work. But they're most certainly conservatives in Hollywood. But look at what they're pumping out, and find me like a conservative value anywhere in there.
I agree with you on that, but I will say that as far as the alternative media, which is strictly conservative, a lot of ways, and CMP controlled, whether it's Rush Limbaugh, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Stephen Crowder.
I don't know that it's necessarily strictly conservative, but I think it all ultimately serves the conservative cause. Like even the Daily Beasts and the BuzzFeeds and all those people do not help the left in the slightest. Everything they put out is just laughable garbage.
That's not true. Some of the reporting that they do is legit, like BuzzFeed covering Steve Bannon's meth houses and crack houses down there in Florida, allegedly. That's solid reporting. I can back those up.
Okay.
All right, so you can't. It's just like me saying that Sean Hannity never gets anything right. A broken clock is right twice a day. Okay, like with Alex Jones, it's not what he tells you most of the time; it's what he doesn't tell you. It's what he leaves out. So yes, there are some things that just
right. No. But I will say, as far as BuzzFeed goes, that yes, they absolutely do nail a story. I mean, they had the dossier, whether it was verified or not. They had it. They were one of the sources that had it very, very early on and were reporting on it. They do get stories, but because right next to that story is a story about like a woman trying to figure out whether she should get her 9th or 10th cat because she's lonely and doesn't need a man. That sort of stuff discredits everything that they do on the good side of the journalism, to the point where no one takes that seriously.
The right has those issues too with Cambridge Analytica, though. I mean,
okay, what about Cambridge Analytica?
Cambridge Analytica putting up fake news, literally fake news stories on Facebook and stuff like that to try to get the Trump campaign votes and everything. I mean, the Mercers and Bannon being involved with Cambridge, and it's supposedly even Mike Flynn being involved with Cambridge. That recently had came out.
Yeah, and Ted Cruz had used Cambridge before Trump was even using Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken.
If you're talking about, look, I understand the left irritates me, okay? But the right irritates me just as equally in the shenanigans they pull, too. Like,
right, well, I mean...
We gotta be honest, man. That's the thing we gotta be honest about all this, all right?
No, being honest about it. But, I mean, when you're talking about Cambridge Analytica is not a media outlet. It's not CNN. It's not Fox. It's a organization designed to do precisely what it did, and it did it very, very well.
Yeah, but it's still dirty and...
Oh, but it's dirty and it's cheap. But if the left showed up with a bigger check, they'd be doing it for them too. It's not. I don't know that they're necessarily as partisan.
No, the Mercers and Bannon are conservative. They would have never done it for the left. All right, they weren't free agents. Let's be real.
If it wasn't Cambridge Analytica, it would have been another of the 100 of companies out there trying to do exactly what Cambridge Analytica was doing. I mean, it's just data farming. At the end of the day, they just managed to find a way to find an algorithm that struck a chord.
More than that, you forgot about the connections to Alpha Bank, which, by the way, Trump Tower also made a connection.
Oh, don't get me started on the Alpha Bank. That has been debunked a bajillion times.
No, it
the
has
Alpha
not.
Yes, it has. It was a ping from a junk email that they got sent by a million people. Was sent.
Okay. You could say that, but what about the connections between Alliance Health and the DeVos family's Council for National Policy and their connections to Cambridge Analytica and to the Trump transition team as well?
No, the
Okay.
DeVos family, I'm onto them. But for sure, that is sketchy from the beginning. There most definitely were cabinet positions filled that I could not figure out for the life of
Well,
me
they're
what sense they were
CMP.
supposed
They're
to
all.
make.
Do you want to go through how
Well,
many
yeah,
You want to go through how many CMP members?
initially, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Initially, I'm like, okay, that doesn't make the slightest sense. Ben Carson, I mean, what? Because he lived
CMP.
in public housing. Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, all these things come out. But all right, so what is their master plan with the Secretary of Education that they're managing to
Well,
manipulate from the
remember
CN?
Betsy DeVos down there in Florida. Good old Phyllis Schlafly, America's grandmother, who's grand dame of the CNP and used to go to Craig B. Spence parties where children were molested. The grandmother of America when it comes to conservatism. They were down there in some Charles schools down there in Florida instead of teaching creationism, which as a Christian, I think creationism should be taught equal to evolution.
Okay.
No, they weren't teaching that. They were teaching creationism based off of L. Ron Hubbard's Scientology.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's
So
not great.
that's a problem. All right. So I mean, that's where we get is when you look and see who the CMP's bed with, either it's Unification Church with Reverend Sun Myung Moon, whether it's Scientology, whether it's the Knights of Malta and the Jesuits, whether it is Zionism, it all blends in and it all becomes a problem. So we're talking about Steve Bannon earlier being the most reprehensible person known to mankind. Well, I mean, he worked with Mark Collins Rector, who was a known, and later he worked with Brock Pierce, who was the Mighty Ducks kid, who was tragically groomed by Mark Collins Rector. Interesting enough, an Open Secret never talks about these things because they connect to the right, but Open Secret wouldn't do that. But yeah, so he did Steve Bannon's connections with working with Brock Pierce and the blockchain, Gamergate being dodgy as hell with who was Kavanaugh's friend that later found out he wrote for Gamergate, the guy that they paraded around. Oh, Jason,
I don't
from our
remember
guys
the
is yelling
name.
at me because I can't remember the name of that guy. Anyway, he had many dodges connections when you looked at his Facebook group of him, possibly paying underage, scantily clad Asian girls to read like the Constitution and stuff like that, and take pictures of them. Okay.
Interesting reading material choice, but all right.
So Gamergate was flawed at the beginning. So you have that, and then you have Steve Bannon meeting with Jeffrey Epstein not one time, but twice, both in 2016 while he was on the Trump transition team, and 2018.
Interesting.
So Steve Bannon is as horrible as they come, but he knows how to fake an election, and that's why the prodigal son will return. And the stump this time will not be Gamergate. The stump this time will not be illegal immigration. The stump this time will be Trump was wrong about making his bed with big tech. And Steve Bannon is going to set things straight. And Trump will become the bastion of free speech. Mark my words, that will happen.
Yeah, like it would work. You could see it. He's the type of guy I would cast in that role if that was the narrative that I was playing out. But yeah, I mean, look, bottom line is like 99.9% of all these people in this power, level that we're talking about, the super elites, the CNPs, the CFPs, the presidential nominees, the senators, all these folks in the upper echelon of the media and banking and all, they're awful people. All of them are awful people. But the bottom line is that ultimately those awful people make a decision that affects the rest of us. And while they all lie through their teeth, on occasion they do actually have to back up what they say. Otherwise, you don't get elected if you're like Joe Manchin is a Democrat, but he's always, he's pro-gun, he's pro this, he's pro that because he's in West Virginia and it is a relatively conservative voting base down there. And that's one of a million examples. Susan Collins is peripherally a Republican at best when it actually matters on votes. So we need to pick amongst the crappiest people basically on earth who all happen to have an exorbitant amount of money and power. We got to try and pick through this with a fine-tooth comb and find somebody who could do a little bit of good for the rest of us. And it's hard. And
Yeah.
I ultimately don't know that Trump is going to pan out the way that I think he's panning out. I just think so far it hasn't been that bad. The world has not fallen apart in the way that we would expect it. A lot of people would have expected it to.
I don't know. I mean, the guy was Mark Judge. I remembered his name was Mark Judge. That was Kavanaugh's
Mark
friend.
Judge. There you go.
That was part of that wrote articles for Gamergate. I don't know, man. I'm starting to think that the economy may be pulled after the election by the world order, may or maybe not. We'll see.
Well, it'll depend on whether or not Trump is their pick, right? Because if they want him out and
So
that economy
here's
tanks anywhere between now and November, whoever they run is going to win because everyone's going to blame Trump.
so let me ask you: do you think that is a possibility? Let's throw it out there. Let's go to speculation island, as Jimmy would say, where we're going to get a Democratic brokered convention in Charlotte. Okay.
Okay.
And so there's no one, no one's, everybody's going to either want Tulsi, who's former CFR member for 5 years, CIA connections. They're going to argue for her. You've got the Bernie bros, they're going to argue for Bernie. You got Biden, they're going to argue for them. And you got Warren or Kamala Harris. You can
Oh, don't forget the Yang Gang.
Nah,
Come on.
Yang Gang ain't going to happen. Even though I will say this. If I'm looking at it strictly from a selfish point of view, if Yang got elected and gave me my Yang bucks because it's all going to hell anyway, might as well. All right. If
There is an element of me. It was like, if it's got to be one of them, I kind of wish it would be him.
If it's going to hell and Yang gets elected, if the world's going to hell in a handbasket, the revelation's coming, Yeshua's coming down from the clouds, might as well in the time being I get my Yang bucks. All right, might as well, right? So
I'll take it.
So, but if it's going to come down to them, and let's say it's a broker convention and there's fist fighting and Antifa's there and it's just a dirty, dirty time.
Oh, wow.
All right.
Okay, I like this picture. Go ahead, paint more. Go.
Who do you think is going to show up? Is it going to be Hillary Clinton, who recently got plastic surgery, and they've been running newspaper articles about the goddess's return? Is it going to be Thrilla in Manila, Trump versus Clinton too?
Oh,
and the
my
reason
God.
why Clinton comes back this time is because no one can win, and all those people are chumps. But the Clintons are here to save the day. Is it that? Or is it going to be Michelle My Belle Obama? Or do you run Michelle My Belle Obama in 2024? Which one is it?
There's a lot of options there, and all of them are viable. I think if Hillary has any real chance, they're going to have to rub out Bill. He just can't be around now with the Epstein stuff.
100%, he dies for sympathy.
Yeah, he would have to. And if he does, she'll win.
He goes to Billy Epstein. He goes Bin Laden Island. Epstein's on Bin Laden Island. He goes there. So yeah, I mean that's what happens. Bill dies in quotation marks, and then Hillary Clinton is, she's still running for this to unite this country because she's the only one who can do it. Okay?
Yep.
I think that's a possibility.
I think.
So what do you think about it? You think it's possible?
I think that's possible. I mean, look, she keeps poking herself, poking her head out every so often. Every time there's like a big national event everybody's buzzing about, she comes out, oh, look, James Comey's innocent, even though he's not really. Mass shootings and this, all this.
Bard the Fixer Man.
I know.
No one's getting arrested. No one's getting arrested. No one. I stick
No one
behind
yet.
that. No one yet. No one yet. Bull crap. No one's going down that should go down. Just like when Barr approved the pardons for all of the Iran-Contra members, including Casper Warburger, in for a penny, in for a pound. No one's going down in this as far as anybody consciential that should go down. I guess you can argue Manafort did to a certain degree. Maybe Roger Stone. I doubt it. Roger Stone's got a brownstone that he inherited from Trump mentors Ward Cohn, as thick as the Bible. All right? But still, nonetheless...
Yeah,
who do you think if it's not Clinton or if it's not Michelle My Belle?
I'm still probably sadly optimistic about the FISA abuse. But back to, Michelle, I think Michelle Obama is a real kind of wild card in all of this in probably a variety of ways. But I'm very curious as to why the Obamas have been silent on Joe Biden so far, right? Like let's take just a step back from the conspiratorial. Let's look back more on the surface of all this. Why are they chilling on Richard Branson's yacht while their man's out here getting called a racist by Kamala Harris? There needs to, if they were behind him 100%, they would have already been out in front saying, this is our guy. Michelle could very well end up his VP. And that would boost a lot of votes for people who vote about, stupid shit that doesn't really matter. And I'm very curious as to why that hasn't happened yet. Michelle Obama seems to me like a wild card in that if they desperately need somebody who's got, maybe they got somebody who's got policies, maybe they got an Elizabeth Warren, where the most of the left seems to be kind of like okay with her. Then no one's
Pocahontas can't win.
Oh well, no, no one's super enthused by Pocahontas, but she's kind of got this like she's a woman. She's always getting dumped on by Trump, so she can like come back and get the victory for Hillary. She's kind of adopted almost all of Bernie Sanders's policies, which is it is what it is. So they're kind of looking at it from the Dems' perspective. I think they're looking at her as sort of the perfect hybrid of Hillary and Bernie. And if they had something like that last time around, I think they would have won. I don't think they're
Yeah,
right, but I
yeah,
think that's what they think.
yeah.
And so that I think she's the party pick right now, and they're kind of doing everything they can. They've even protected her in the first couple of debates. They didn't put her on the stage with Harris or Biden or Buttigieg or Booker or any of the
Hmm.
people, the more loudmouths of the party. So I think they've kind of been keeping her back. They're protecting her. It's like pro wrestling because everything is. And so Michelle Obama, if she comes out and she joins on to a party, or the Obamas for that matter, endorse somebody, I think that's something that they're kind of keeping in their back pocket. The problem is that do they do it too late? I think they thought that they would kind of get Joe or Bernie or Warren, and they would just kind of go, and then one of them would get picked, and then the Obamas would come in and be like, yes, this is our guy. Because you don't want them coming out and endorsing one person and
Yeah.
then somebody else winning, and then it just, it sort of ruins their cred in addition to whoever it is that gets nominated. So I think they were holding that card till the very end, but this virtual kind of, well, it's not virtual, but semi three-way tie kind of three dog race that we got going with Bernie and Pocahontas and Biden. I think the Obamas may decide that race. Basically, whoever they come in and be like, that's our guy, that's going to be the guy. So I don't know if it's Joe, and if it was Joe, I would have thought that they would have played that
Well,
card
Joe's
a
wife
while
even
back.
tanked Joe. I mean, no one's gonna vote for
Yes.
creepy Joe Biden.
She's like,
Um,
maybe other people are better on this policy, but Joe's got a real fighting chance. Like, that's a real endorsement from your wife. That's not good. That's not good.
okay. Um, so where do we go from here? Now, I'm not voting in 2020. I refuse to. I'm not voting.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm not. I can't vote for. I just can't do. I can't vote for CMP Trump. I can't do it. I don't care if this country goes to hell in a handbasket. We gotta learn an important lesson. I can't do it. I can't do it. I'll never vote again. Actually, to be honest with you, I might vote local elections, maybe, but I haven't even decided whether or not I'm black pilled. Beyond black pilled.
Okay.
So where do we go? Where do we go from here? I mean, okay. So if Trump wins, all
Hmm.
right. What do you see? Why don't you tell me what you hope, and then what you realistically see happening, and then I'll tell you what I think is probably going to end up happening.
If Trump wins, I'm optimistic that. Well, I'm first and foremost optimistic that he will win. I
I
think.
believe it's the CMP's plan currently for Trump to win an overwhelming landslide with the prodigal son returning of Steve Bannon. Yes.
My God, if it is anything like a coin flip, I will be shocked. I think it's going to come down to the wire. But if it is a landslide,
Ronald Wilson Reagan landslide if Steve Bannon returns, because the left is going to go beyond unhinged, even though it's controlled unhinged. And they'll have.
I can't even fathom that. I hope you're right, obviously,
No,
but I can't
that,
even fathom that.
That's what's going to happen. I promise you. They are setting it up. I can see 16, 32 second, dimensional chess. Even though I hate using that as a joke, I'm joking saying that. But it's going to happen. So if that is the card for right now, that may change. It may change. But that's the card for right now. The left is going to have a broker convention, and they're going to go crazy. All right, and they're going to probably run Hillary Clinton, is my guess. Hillary Clinton is going to lose to Trump in a landslide because Trump's going to come out and he's going to say, I listened to all these fools. There's going to be many cabinet shakeups. Okay, they're going to bring in hardliners, even hardline CMPers. Okay, and Bannon's going to be there, and Bannon's going to say, Trump will keep America great. He will do as he says he will do. It will happen, and I pledge that it will happen.
It is going to be interesting. I mean, I think if he wins, there's going to be a couple things. Like one, I'm sort of super interested to see what an unhinged sort of lame duck doesn't have to worry about re-election Donald Trump would look like. I think we'll get a little bit more of a view of what his real intentions are, because at that point, it doesn't really necessarily need to hide them as much.
That's Q optics. But go ahead.
No, I don't. No. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm saying like we'll find out exactly what his whether it's a deep state takedown agenda or it's a full blown I'm part of the deep state agenda. I think that's when we'll know one way or another definitively.
I already know, but I mean that's for the people who don't know. Yes, I agree.
I don't think you can know until he gets through the second election. But obviously you've got more than enough information to back up your opinion. I'm not going to poo-poo it.
Okay.
But also there is going to be a just a I don't know. I don't want to say a civil war because it's not really it's not going to be conventional in the way that it was. But there are going to be massive riots in major cities all across the country,
Now,
and that's going to.
do you think that could be a way? And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I want to get to
No,
the
no, go ahead.
you said. Do you think that could be a way? Because Alex Jones is now talking about how he was wrong about Iran-Contra. He's defending Oliver North. He's defending what the CMP defended back there about the FEMA camps and the Rex 84 camps and everything like that, where they weren't to put the dissidents, American dissidents like the hippies, but during the late 80s, where Americans would have been against a Latin American civil war. I mean, say what you want to say about Latin American illegal immigration. To Americans back then, they were, maybe it's kind of changed a little bit in America's opinions of Latin America, but back then they were seen kind of, we would have it would have been a war in our backyard, okay? And Americans didn't want that, all right? So there would have been huge, this isn't Vietnam, this isn't Korea, they would have been pissed, all right?
Right.
So that's where who I believe that the FEMA camps were, the Rex 84 camps were for, were to put dissidents into those camps. Now, Alex Jones now says that that's not the case as liberal communist propaganda, that it was for the illegal immigrants that would have spilled across the border and they would have sent them back. Even though we've read the Rex 84 plans, we know that's not the case. We know Oliver North's a piece of crap, all right? So that can't be the case, all right? So he goes back, he does he does 180 on that, all right? So what if that is one of their scenarios that the left just goes insane and is controlled to a certain degree, and they have massive riots and they start putting people into camps, but they're not putting leftists in camps. Even if they were putting leftists in camps, I'd be against that. Alex Jones says, well, the leftists might have to go to camps for re-education. That's bullshit, in my opinion.
Right.
Okay?
Yes. No. Nothing along those lines. I mean, people will need to be detained inevitably in what will happen.
Line on both sides. Yes, I agree. But the thing is, what if that's what happens? Then where you go, oh my God, I was wrong.
No, I was going to actually throw you a line here and be like, you know what, and that could very well be the cover for whatever, drastically devious plot that Trump has been trying to, enact on behalf of the CNP this whole time, is that will cause enough chaos to where no one will pay attention to anything else. Cities will have, large portions of it shut down. People won't be able to get to work. Mass transit's going to get shut down. Like, it's going to be something we haven't seen since the likes of the Civil War in this country. It won't quite be that drastic because, again, there's just the barriers aren't quite there in nice, neat forms in the way that they used to be. But it could very well be building up to that, and then that could henceforth kind of provide cover for whatever else that they want to do while we're all paying attention to the Molotov cocktails being thrown like at the McDonald's on 42nd Street in New York. There's definitely an element of that where I could see something like that happening. I'm not, I think the left is going to freak out. I don't know that's, when the master plan takes over necessarily.
But the right's going to freak out too, though. I mean,
well, the right is only going to freak out if the right is attacked by the left, which obviously it will be. But we're also talking about city centers. Like the leftists in the cities are not going to go marching out into the countryside and try and deal with the folks with the guns. Like a lot of these places we're talking about, even the conservatives probably don't have pistols, don't have firearms in a lot of these cities.
But don't you see that's why we might be losing the culture war? Because remember, okay, you and I were children of the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Remember how everybody was together during the 90s for the most part?
For the most part, yeah.
They're not now.
No, they're not. You know what? There was an element towards the end of the 90s. There was sort of a little bit of a cultural divide from what I remember. I remember 9/11 being sort of this big uniter for the country, right?
It was,
all of a sudden, everybody kind of rallied behind that.
But that's my issue is if that happens. Now, that's the doomsday scenario. That's, Trump becomes Cyrus the Great White Hope. There's wars going on over there. There's war here at home. Yeshua's coming around the corner. That's what's happening. It's the Book of Revelation. It's end times. It's on. All right. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's going to be that dire. Not yet. It could be, but I don't think it's going to be. So give me a middle of the road Trump wins.
A middle of the road Trump wins. Trump wins And we'll probably get a lot more of the same sort of stuff. We'll probably get like a Kardashian in the cabinet. Like it'll be he's going to fulfill every stupid thing he's ever wanted to do as president. He might start talking about UFOs on TV. A lot of it'll be just a bunch of distraction for whatever it is that he's, whoever he's working with has got it going on behind the scenes. And a lot of it, just I kind of wanted to mention this about, I don't know, 40 minutes ago, but I'm not, particularly keen on a lot of the cabinet picks either. I think a lot of people kind of got in his ear. They kind of talked to him. It's if this is sort of the Civil War in the New World Honor. Now I'm talking about my wrestling again. But in the New World, hilarious. Billy Ray's gonna laugh about that. But if there is this sort of divide here, you got Obama got his cabinet from an email from Citibank, and Trump gets his cabinet from the CNP, whoever the brain trust is over there that's putting all that sort of stuff together. There does need to be an element of like these people do need to get through Congress, which is unfortunately another cesspool of other equally crooked people that all have agendas as well. So it's not as if he could have picked you and me for the cabinet and we were going to get in. There just needs to be. It's a chess game, I guess. It's not 4D chess, but it's a chess game. It's a regular 3D chess game or a regular 2D chess game, and I think if he wins, I think it's just going to be a lot more of the same sort of stuff. He'll try to cut taxes again, for corporations and all that sort of stuff. He'll try to set himself up for his post-presidential life while all of the lemmings in the cabinet are off pushing all of these other agendas that they're trying to push.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, 2016 John would have seen that, but now no. My guess is what's going to happen, and I don't think you're going to get you and I's wet dream. It's actually both where we actually agree if Trump is our guy. There's like maybe a 0.01% chance, in my opinion, that's true. But let's just say you got to give him. And it is Trump versus the deep state, and I was wrong about Q. And it does.
Dude,
happen.
if we are wrong about Q, that I think a lot of people are going to be very, very mysteriously happy. Even people who had never heard about Q are going to suddenly be like, "Okay, yeah, this guy's doing it." Like, who knew?
But
I'll probably be shocked if it happens that way.
Exactly, but if it happens that way, then fine, so be it. I was wrong. I'll admit I'm wrong. I'll come in here. I'll cry. I'll say, "God bless America." There's no way. But if it does happen, I will eat humble pie. All right. But my guess is two things we've mentioned. I don't think it's going to go the black-pilled, we're screwed, World War III and massive civil war at home. It could go that way. I just don't think it's ready to happen for that yet. We might get some foreign war over there in Syria. I don't think the war in Iran is ready to happen quite yet. It will happen, but it's not ready to happen quite. I could be wrong. It could happen in 2
No, you know what? I was actually
months.
just going to say, if all of these wars that that you're projecting might end up happening, that's a second-term thing. And
I will say Venezuela's going to flip. About sure on that. Nicaragua may flip. I'm pretty sure we will have war in Syria. Something will happen eventually. Maybe Iran, but I doubt it, but maybe. But I will say this. It is likely, my guess what's going to happen is the CNP is going to get more of their agenda in. You think that Trump's being rid of the culture war and saving our rights. I think it's going to look that way going in, with Steve Bannon returning, it's going to look that way going into the election, okay? But as soon as he's elected, it ain't going to be Q where, now he doesn't have to worry about optics and he's going to fix everything and go against vaccinations and 5G and chemtrails and whatever. No. Instead, what's going to happen is Trump's going to go, the CNP is going to go back to being the CNP. And they're going to slowly get away with what they can with eroding our rights even further. Whether that's more war, whether that's anti-BDS laws, not being able to boycott Israel, whether it's actually a restriction of our free speech, even though Trump didn't promise that, but instead of actually coming from Trump, this time it comes from the social media networks and platforms, and there's nothing Trump can do about it, okay, because he's a lame duck president. For some reason or another, he loses both houses completely by the next major Senate and House elections.
possible.
So I don't know. My guess is that's probably what's going to happen is we'll get some skirmishes and a possible war in the Middle East with Syria. I don't think it'll go to Iran, but it can.
I'd be inclined to think it would be going to Iran sooner rather than later. Although this whole recent thing with the this whole show over at the G7, it's so funny. This thing is just like a big puppet show, and it's just a bunch of puppets. Actually, it's maybe some puppeteers, but mostly puppets. But you had Iran, the representative from Iran showing up.
Yeah.
Trump didn't know about it. It was just that was like this whole narrative unto itself, like as if any of that really matters. But yeah, I would think because Iran's kind of more in the narrative that if we were to go to war in one of those countries, I think Syria's kind of fallen to people's, back burners. Most people aren't thinking about Syria actively. The fact that they're pushing Iran in the media more and more, I would be more inclined to think that that's where the conflict will arise.
I think they got to get Syria before they get Iran. I think Assad has to fall before they get to Iran. They might not, but I mean, we're looking at logistically. It's likely that Syria has to fall first.
I mean, if history is any tell, we'll go into Iran and we'll arm Assad to go ahead and help us with Iran.
Yes, of course. Okay, you know what? That might be 100% right for all I know.
That could very well be where we go.
Yeah, I'm wrong. Yep, I never saw it that way. You actually might be right about that.
Or the other way, maybe we'll arm the Iran. Well, all of a sudden Trump is all chummy with the Iran, with the mullahs over there, whatever's going on in Iran, and then all of a sudden, now they both
Saudi
team up
Arabia,
and turn.
which I know you're not necessarily a fan with the House of Saud and how dirty they are. So
that's true. The Middle East, I mean, look, everything that goes on in the Middle East obviously leads back to Israel in some way, shape, or form. With Saudi Arabia, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting partnership, but at the same time, I mean, like Israel has always been an ally of ours. I know we differ greatly on our beliefs in Israel. I don't even know that I necessarily want to get into the weeds of that with you right now, but they've always been an ally of ours. Saudi Arabia is one of the few countries over there trying not to kill us.
Now, if you would have asked me back maybe 15 years ago, I would have let that slide and said Israel is our greatest ally. No, they're not in the slightest bit.
Who would you say is our greatest ally?
There's no country that's. I mean, they're all part of the world order.
So we're picking from the bottom of the barrel, but yes.
But if you were to say who really is our greatest ally, if you really want, if I had to guess, it would be the country that we fought our independence from.
How funny is that, right? Yeah, Britain is definitely up there, if not, if not. If I take my conspiratorial, they live glasses off. Okay, I know that the Queen, we're still under British rule and all that. All right, so I don't doubt that the royal family had something to do with Epstein. Let's face it.
Before people get there in the comments, and they're like, John says that Great Britain's, I'm just talking about as far as a kinship of the people of the United States with the kinship of the people of Great Britain, mainly where we came from, or even Europe, you could say any of the countries in Europe. My ancestry is French and English. So, and I would say that they are way more greatest allies ever than any other country would be, in my opinion, just because, they're. And I know you could say America's way more diverse now, but I'm talking about from its initiating of its founding. So you and I definitely we won't get into the weeds of Israel, but I will definitely state that Israel is not our greatest ally, and I am.
Oh well, I mean, I think there's different chessboards we're talking about. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's funny because there are certain countries around the world. There's so many layers and in depth, and kind of. There's so many, I guess, layers to the relationship with any given country that we have, either in relation to just a one-on-one thing or, in relationship to the world. Like England, it culturally is shifting almost into like a worst case scenario for us here, as far as like the left kind of taking control. It's now kicking back a little bit. You had the Brexit thing. Now we've got Boris Johnson in control over there. Not that I know an incredible amount of of the nitty gritty of all that, but I do think that they're an ally with us in respect to that there's a cultural identity that the British hold on to and that we hold on to. And even on a kind of taking a farther step back, I think that's why to a certain degree, like Trump is okay with Putin, why he kind of chums up with him, why he's okay with Xi.
Well, Trump's okay with Putin because of his connections to Russia.
Well, all right, neither here.
I'm not going PP dossier, even though I do believe that there is some true in the Steele dossier to get that out of the way. But I will say that it's not that the Russians hacked the election. That's silly. But I will say that Trump does have major connections to Russian Jewish oligarchs and Russian oligarchs who aren't Jewish. And he did through business dealings. His family have massive connections to them. And and I think that's what the whole Russian collusion thing is so that both sides, both the Democrats and the Republicans, both Clinton and Trump, both had strong connections to Putin and Russia. They didn't want you to know that, so instead they go, "Oh, it's the PP dossier," which I'm,
the salacious stuff, right?
And denigrate that when it's actually some stuff in there that's actually true. And I've read parts of the Steele dossier on my channel and talked about what parts are true, that we know are true. So that's the thing is anybody on the right, when they go Trump has connections to Russia, it's like knee jerk. What Russia Gate, Russia Gate, and then when it's on the left, I actually got called that I'm in bed with Russia because I went against Q by a right-leaning person, okay? So, in left, it's, Clinton has no ties to Russia or China. Trump's got ties to China, So when you tell me China. Trump's cool with Putin, Trump's cool with Xi, of course he is. They're all in bed with one another.
Again, where I was going with that point ultimately is that these are leaders that have countries that have cultural identities that want to maintain them. I do think at the end of the day, Trump is very much kind of worried about globalism, the false song of globalism, as he once famously said. I think there's an element.
I think he's the king of the Jews. I think he's the king of Israel. I don't think he's the king of the United States.
The king of the Jews.
Because this isn't make Israel great again. It's make America great again. The last time I checked. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know where you were. I don't know how you tied it back to that right away. But like I was saying, I was just getting into the different world leaders out there: the Putins, the Xis, the Kim Jong Uns,
Benjamin Netanyahu's.
Benjamin Netanyahu's fine. I'll throw him in there as well. I think these are countries that fear global expansion. You're looking at the EU,
Bolsonaro.
Who's not only Bolsonaro is another one.
These are
absolutely.
all CNPers, connections to the CNPers who put in there. And my thing is it's the whole false left-right paradigm, and that's one thing I want to harsh is yes,
I don't know what exactly is false about it.
That's the Hegelian dialectic, man. It's what's false about it. It's not within the people. It's not me sitting next to a liberal family member and them giving me their liberal point of view and me giving them a conservative point of view. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these countries. This is a communist country. This is a socialist country. This is a republic. This is a democracy. This country leans heavily to the left. This country leans heavily to the right. That's all bull crap. That's all bull crap when it comes to the world order. You know that. When it comes to the tippy
I don't know that. I don't know that. I don't know that at all. The countries are run the way that they're run. I mean, how can you argue the fact that there are countries that are socialist, there's countries that are communist, there's countries that are capitalist? I mean, those are basic truths. They exist. I mean, yes, there are people pulling the strings behind all of that, but that doesn't mean that the countries aren't existing as they are.
They are. That is true. You're right about that. But let me ask you a question. Do you think the Founding Fathers were good, and do you think that the basic framework that they laid this country was good, or do you think America is that, or do you think America were the people who came over here through blood, sweat, and tears and work in their brow to make this country where it is or what it is today? Which one do you think it is? Because in my opinion, it's the people. It's not the Founding Fathers, where majority of them were Illuminists, majority of them were deists. I can't maybe name one that was a Christian except for maybe John Adams, and that's a maybe, okay? So if this country was found as a grand design of the spirit of revolution, like the French Revolution was, but the French Revolution was a step further, that was more violent. The Bolshevik Revolution was a further step further from that and was more violent than the French Revolution. If you take it based on that principle, then you should know, I mean, if you're truly black pill and truly look at the Illuminati and look at the top of the pyramid, whatever you want to call them, the left-right paradigm, culturally you can argue it's important, okay, on an individual level. But other than that, it's bullcrap.
Well, even in policy it exists. I mean, we're talking about the CNP versus the CFP, right? Countries are flipping.
Versus the CFR. But
CFR, my apologies.
Okay, the thing is you can argue they're flipping, but you can also argue that they're really not, and they really appear that they're flipping, but everything is done by design. For example, why is it that you okay, here's a good thing. Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump take a lot of lead from the CNP. Okay, they're true CNP presidents. Okay. But George H.W. Bush, who appears to be a Republican, he played both sides. He played both the CFR and the CNP. Okay. Bill Clinton also did to some degree as well. So did George H.W. Bush. Now, Obama, you could say, was strictly CFR in a lot of the things that he did. But you can also argue he still continued the wars. They still happened. CNP still gained some ground within the Obama administration as well. So my thing to you is they're both, no matter who's in power, the world order is still kicking and destroying our liberty, our freedom, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's how I look at it. And I know you and I may disagree on that, but I mean that, I think the left-right paradigm is and that's why I'm not voting. That's why I don't believe in Trump. That's why I don't believe any of this. Because when it gets down and we get to thick in the weeds, it's all the same. It's all the same. Now, ideologically, you can say there's differences in what people personally believe, and I agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to a country, my country would be fiscally conservative. Charity should be done by local communities and Christian organizations, religious organizations. Anti-legal immigration, pro-gun, pro-life, pro-free speech. Stuff that you and I would agree in mostly on mostly everything, okay?
I'll live there. Yeah, for sure.
But the thing is it'll non-interventionalist, okay? Non-interventionalist at all. You could argue, what about the genocide in Darfur? I'd say, well, if that's the only thing we do is to stop genocide, then it's fine. If in a utopian society, I'm looking at a utopian America, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're never going to get there because the world order exists. That's leftist. That's like me looking at a conservative American saying this is a utopia, and then a leftist looking at a leftist socialist, everything's free, something you and I might disagree on, but them looking at their own utopia and their own hopium,
Yeah, well, it's funny because I think what we're dealing with is, yes, both of those organizations just increasingly get more powerful, and yes, our rights continue to erode, but we also started from a place where we had more, and inevitably we're going to get less. I think absolutely we did. Yeah, we did.
Or was it? Why is it the United States has per capita the largest prison
Well, let's put it this way: for every amendment, every U.S. code, everything that's been added on since 1781, have any of them given us more rights than we had?
No.
I mean, everything is just infringing upon what we already had, and even things like gay marriage, now you're infringing upon, belief systems of large swaths of the country and things along those lines. So everything chips away a little bit from that time moving to today, and will continue to do so.
But I think that was by design even from its inception, though.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that as far as the left-right paradigm goes and how that kind of works and all this, actually, I was just watching there's a South Park episode that does a really good job about talking about the left-right paradigm.
I used to love South Park, but it is garbage now, just like The Simpsons, man.
This is an older episode. I'll send it to you if you haven't watched it already. Definitely check it out.
It's been a while. I haven't watched South Park in years, but I used to watch it.
Okay. But it kind of talks about how there's almost like there's never ending tug of war that's going on here where yes, there's this paradigm, and yes, it causes tension, but it may very well be for the political and cultural good. Is that that there's an element of, obviously, if we only had one party, that party would get pretty powerful very quickly and would probably go off the rails, because as we all know, things about absolute power, they corrupt absolutely. But this kind of system where it's okay, maybe we're in a good place in our country right now. I'm not saying this moment right now, I'm just saying hypothetically. We're in a good place where the economy's strong. We're being fiscally conservative. We have a little bit of flexibility to start worrying about other things, and that's when the left comes along and goes, okay, let's move the Overton window a little bit on culture, and then kind of things settle down a little bit. Maybe that affects the economy. Then we have to go back to being a little bit more fiscally conservative, and this kind of cycle goes back and forth. I think if any one of the systems ever fully reigned, if we were a pure democracy or a pure republic, to just kind of dumb it down that way, I think ultimately it would have collapsed a long time ago. But this kind of it's a tension bridge. It's almost like we're just barely keeping each other afloat.
Organic, it wasn't by design though, and I would agree with you on that. But the thing is my grandpa used to say, sometimes having too much freedom is just as bad as not having enough.
Yeah, and because obviously things can go wrong. I mean, I said at the top of the show here, I'm like about 3 steps to the left of anarchy. I recognize anarchy. I don't think it would work entirely, obviously.
And I do have some issues with free market capitalism. I do think regulations, when done properly, is important. I am also a little bit of environmentalist, not in climate change, but I do think that corporations do, and the government in and of itself too does do a lot of polluting, and it's more the elite and more planned obsolescence and stuff like that I think that should be regulated. But I'm not climate change and any of that stuff. But I do think on a level that we do pollute our environment, are not good stewards of the earth. To some degree, there is some truth on that. But the thing is, it's Al Gore lecturing me and wagging his finger, and where I should actually be wagging my finger at Al Gore. That where it's, so, and I think maybe you would agree with me on that. It maybe, maybe some, again, that would be a perfect society where I think that would, because when you have free market, complete open free market trade and free market capitalism, like we even talk about tariffs are actually against that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's relative too, though. That's something. I mean, if we had worldwide free trade, tariffs don't exist, but because there are other countries that have other systems that don't involve free trade, I think that's when they become necessary.
Make money somehow.
Exactly. I think that, and like you were saying at the top there, if we want to go to a tariff system and nix the income tax, like double thumbs up as far as I'm concerned. I think that works extraordinarily well. But yeah, like you were saying, I mean, yeah, you're sort of, I guess, slightly right leaning or more right leaning kind of utopia there. I think that would be a wonderful thing for if we could ever get there. I don't know. I don't know the strategy as to how to get there. I know that if I were to try to do what you do, I could not do it as nearly as effectively as you do it, as far as reading the documents and getting down into the nitty gritty of the details of who's running who's working with who's this, that, and the other thing. I think all of that work is so important, dude. I don't ever want to discount what the stuff that you do, that Billy Ray does, the things like that.
Doing, Andrew,
absolutely. I think that, on the more cultural, political, social level, like I think those are fights that we can win. Whether or not we're winning them, I guess we have our differences, but I think that's where we can get people to open up. Like I think even on the smaller level, like you were talking about, like pollution and things along those lines, like that's something that we can stop that. That's that. If it's happening in your neighborhood and you're not saying something about it, like we need to kind of all collectively take a little bit of responsibility. I think the same goes for these tech companies and for the Amazons of the world. I love the free market, but we all also need to have a little bit of consciousness about how much money do we want to give the richest man in the world, and how much more of our money do we want to continue to give the richest man in the world.
As Ben Shapiro says, that's not free market capitalism, Andrew. How dare you?
Well, it is though. You have the right to do it, but I think like we all just kind of checked out a while back, even before Amazon.
Think the government has to do some amount of regulation, because even people have to be nannied a little bit. And that goes the line between libertarianism, conservatism, and anarchy. In anarchy, there's no step in, and you have minarchism, and then you have libertarianism, and then you have conservatism, and so it's kind of like a spectrum. I don't think it's socialist or communism where the government has to. I can't open up a bakery, but you're always going to get a little bit of red tape, and I do think in a perfect society, some is needed. Because
right. I think all that sort of stuff should be implemented on a much lower level. The federal government should be doing that. The states, even the bigger metropolises should be able to kind of have a certain level of sovereignty unto themselves. The counties. I always kind of joke. Another one of my quick political quips is that, like, if it were up to me, your mayor would be the most powerful politician in your life. Like, he would make all of the really important decisions for you because you can go knock on his door and be like, hey, what the hell? Why'd you do this? So if we could start sprinkling that power down from the federal government to the states, to the counties, to the cities, to the towns, I think we could solve a lot of these problems in doing that.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I wish it could be that. I'm so black-pilled, I don't think it could ever be that. But I wish it would. Like, I want to live in this America that you and I envision. I just don't think Trump is going to give it to us. That's the thing. Is and I don't think he, and it makes me sad. I wake up every morning wishing I'm wrong, Andrew. I'm wishing I'm wrong, and I'm wishing you're right. But
and you know what? The truth may lie somewhere in between. He might just be the big orange oaf that everyone says. He's got no real agenda. He's just kind of dumbing his way through this whole thing, and he's getting pulled along by the CNP to a certain degree. But honestly, it's funny because throughout that whole Russiagate stuff, which was what it was. It was just this thought that the left and the media and that all these people that were out there convinced that was happening were holding in their heads was that simultaneously Donald Trump is a evil mastermind and yet a boorish buffoon who can barely wipe his own ass. Like, how can both of those things be true?
You're right.
Now, what we're talking about here is a little bit of maybe he's oblivious as the CNP is doing all their stuff in the background. Maybe he's not, maybe he is, but I find it very, very hard to believe that if Donald Trump is complicit in all of this, that he's, he wouldn't just come out and say it one day,
Well,
because I
well,
don't know that he's
well,
got a lot of
well, I
tact on that
disagree with
front.
you that. I mean, I think Trump has about 120, 125 IQ. I don't think he's as smart as Obama is. I don't think he's dumb. I don't think he's like dumb and drooling and just sitting there doesn't know how to read. But I don't think he's. We've had. I think he's probably as smart as about George W. Bush. Maybe slightly more intelligent.
Yeah.
Most people think George W. Bush is dumb, but George W. Bush isn't dumb. He just didn't try hard. Those are two different things. You know,
That's fair, actually.
So I don't think Trump's IQ is as high as George H.W. Bush. I don't think his IQ is as high as Obama. But I think he's actually probably smarter than Ronald Reagan was. But that's neither here nor there. I do think Trump is controlled. I think Trump is implicit in a lot of it. Complicit in a lot of it. I mean, Trump's mentor was Roy Cohn. Roy Cohn was a horrible human being. He ran multiple brownstone operations allegedly, and Trump has many connections to Epstein. It's just as much as Clinton, if not more. So and like I said, the majority of Trump's cabinet appointments either spoke to the CNP or were members of the CNP. Kellyanne Conway, member of the CNP. Kenneth J. Blackwell, who's the election integrity committee's member of the CNP. John Bolton was a member of the CNP. Steve Bannon was a member of the CNP. Michael Flynn has spoken to the CNP multiple times. Betsy DeVos, member of the CNP. The Voss family has been in the CNP for a long period of time. I'm probably blanking on some, but yeah, Rick Perry, Secretary of Energy, CNP.
Yeah, there's another one.
And I have everything to back this up. I can show you, but there's probably some more I can't think of at this moment. I'm blanking. But yeah, they're all. It's just surprising once you look at that and you're like, well, man, Benjamin Carson, like we mentioned earlier, you're like, man, all these people, it's not like 5% or 10%. It's close to almost 75 to 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of makes you think, well, crap, So,
it does and it doesn't. Look, with the black pill notwithstanding here for a minute, I don't know that. There's probably a million organizations that those same people also, those are, we're talking about very powerful, very, supposedly conservative folks. They all roll in the same circles.
Guys, even if you look in that regard.
Oh no, maybe they're not. And again, this may very well be a civil war of some sort in the New World Order. Maybe I'm choosing the wrong side. Maybe I'm choosing the right side. Maybe neither side is ultimately good for us, which is probably the reality of the situation.
I think you just have hope in Trump and what he represents.
I have hope not necessarily in Trump so much as the movement. And there is a lot of it that's sort of asleep. But I when he got elected, I was one of the few people who was vocal about how confident I was that he was going to win. And then when it happened, everyone I knew was like, "You're a genius."
Yes, you can go back and also all my friends back then and people in my group and stuff like that. Yeah, I said Trump will win. Everybody doubted. I said Trump. I actually was going to take a bet, $5,000 bet with Titus about Trump winning because I was that confident. So I said Trump will win.
But it was one of those things that maybe it was all manipulated, maybe voting machines, this, that, and the other thing. But the very idea that enough votes were cast and enough people are out going to these rallies and all this sort of stuff, and even if they are 70% of them don't even really know what's going on and they're just there to kind of go along for the ride. The fact that there's this passion about the things that he's saying, whether or not he's actually doing them, but the fact that he's saying them and he's getting a positive response from so many people, I think is encouraging. And it does give me hope. And maybe it's false hope. I really hope not. But at the end of the day, again, I consider the alternative. I don't know that Hillary Clinton's America would be anything, is it great now? Maybe it's not as great as he promised, but it's certainly not, completely falling apart, at least from my perspective.
At least not yet. I'm glad we got...
Yeah, you're right. Could fall apart tomorrow. Could fall apart the day after he gets reelected.
I'm glad we had the discussion, Andrew.
Oh, me too, man. This was fun.
And I want to have you back on for sure. I want to have you back on. I want to talk about this some more. And I think we agree on way more than we disagree on.
I think so too. It was actually.
I thought I was gonna come in here and I was gonna be like, but.
No, it's funny, because we do. I think policy-wise, ideally, I think we, the universe you painted is most certainly one I would like to live in. It was funny. I was actually on another show talking about Marvel stuff recently, and I was telling the host, CEO Hayes of the Awakened Soul podcast, I was telling him I was going to come on here, and and then I'm going to be talking to another Trump supporter who doesn't necessarily agree, or not another Trump voter, somebody who voted for Trump who doesn't necessarily agree with me. He's like, how does that conversation even go? Like, I got to hear this. I'm like, I don't know. We're going to find out.
But thank you for coming on, Andrew. We'll definitely have
Dude,
you
thank
on
you for having
again.
me.
Whenever you are canceled, this political podcast is supposedly going to be no more.
Yeah,
Um,
R.I.P. Well,
but
it didn't end well.
We'll hear you on the Wednesday Walker Room to wrestling fans out there with the great Billy Ray Valentine and Steve King. Who, I'm a fan of all of y'all. I love
Yeah,
wrestling.
shout outs to them.
Sometimes I make an appearance on there. I'm a huge wrestling fan. It is one of my only pop culture vices, should I say. But definitely thank you for having me on, Andrew. Love to have you on again, brother.
Yeah, dude, we're gonna have to get you back on hashtag WLR one of these days. As a matter of fact, Steve and I were joking around about hitting you up because Billy Ray wasn't gonna be there. Kelly D stepped in, but we'll talk to you in future weeks.
Anytime. We need one day to discuss Vince McMahon and his connections to the CMP as well. I forgot to left off Linda McMahon too.
Billy Ray is gonna be so upset if we do that without him. I love it. Let's definitely do that.
All right, brother. Take care. Bye.
All right, man.
All right, everybody. That is it for this evening. I got to go. Hope you enjoyed it. Andrew is a good dude. We may disagree on Trump. I definitely do not think Trump's our guy. But then again, he isn't lost compared to a majority of the Trump supporters and the Q supporters out there, because he does believe that there is a possibility with his conspiracy knowledge that, it may all go to pot. And I will give him credit where credit is due. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. And always, until next time, always read the documents. I should be back in a stream with tomorrow morning, hopefully, God willing. God bless everyone. Good evening.